Welcome to the NintenFusion podcast, a podcast that fuses past, present, and future Nintendo thought. I'm David, accompanied by my friend Jordan.
This week, we're going to be talking about the end of E3 and the delay of 2022's biggest game. So, E3's gone. So this news kind of surprised me, probably not for the same reason it surprised everyone else. I had already thought E3 was officially canceled before.
you just didn't realize, or you just didn't know. We just didn't know that it was canceled officially.
Well, I swear a bunch of game journalists were posting about it back in November that they had already heard that E3 was canceled. And so I believe I've even talked about it in previous podcast episodes where I had sounded matter of factly, oh, E3 is canceled this year. But if E3 were to exist, blah, 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 or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
So this wasn't too much of a big surprise from a news standpoint. It was just a surprise of I thought we already had gone through this.
Well, now we are going through it, and there are a lot of different opinions about E3 being canceled. There's the whole camp that's like, yeah, E3 really didn't evolve. It didn't change as the industry changed. It was way more focused on advertising, and it was really difficult for smaller publishers to show off their games. And it just became this really large show. And some people really didn't like that about E3. But then you have the opposite side where a whole bunch of people are really upset that it's gone because they have some fond memories of how E3 actually was as an event, So I mean, I have my own opinion on it. I'm going to miss it, but also I kind of agree with the sentiment that various gaming companies figured out how to tell us about their games without E3. Everyone has their own Twitch channel or YouTube channel to show off stuff. So no real reason to hold off for a big event.
So I kind of disagree with the idea that E3 has not evolved. Anyone who says that has not been following E3 since 2004.
Oh, well, yeah.
E3 used to be bad.
Yeah, really bad.
It was so it was always live shows, which live shows had their charm, but they had severe down low slow moments that were really kind of painful. It was really difficult for whenever a foreign game was being presented by one of its directors or publishers. Nintendo had a really hard time with this, considering most of their developers are from Japan. Ubisoft was the other one because a lot of them come from France and French-speaking Quebec. So I remember when Nintendo went to the direct route, and everyone was like, "Oh, Nintendo's finished because they're not doing E3." But they're like, "No, we'll still be at E3, the show. We just won't have a live press." But to normal viewers, I don't know if at the time a lot of people even knew that there was a show floor. E3 was the presentations.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was around the same time that they started doing Treehouse. They might have done Treehouse a couple E3s before that, but everyone was kind of dooming on it because everyone was just used to the live shows, and the directs were a good evolution. But I remember them not being runaway successes because Nintendo didn't quite figure out how to do a good format with them yet. Nintendo Directs, honestly, were pretty bad until the Switch came out.
Oh, they were absolutely awful. But they're also some of my fondest memories as a longtime Nintendo fan. If you witnessed the disaster that was the Wii Music presentation... Oh, man, that was a treat. You were cringing so awful. Hard. It was so awful.
I was so upset after that one because that was right in the middle of the Wii drought, which was really painful if you were a more core gamer.
Yep.
Because it felt like Nintendo had just completely forgotten about us and was chasing after their Blue Ocean audience, which they kind of did. It was, and on top of that, the games that they were making more for the core audience, such as Xenoblade, they weren't porting over to America. We had nothing. And so what was the big game that year? It was Wii Music. And it was so painful because that was the same year that they could have shown off Punch Out, if I remember right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they came out the same year. Yeah.
And they just straight up didn't show Punch-Out at E3.
And Punch-Out was really good on the Wii. Like, it took me until a couple of years after it came out to actually play it. And I was like, why didn't Nintendo push this game harder? You know, like,
no, they didn't push it at all.
Exactly.
Like, it came out and I didn't even hear about it. And I was a Punch-Out fan. So, like, yeah, Nintendo did not advertise that game very much. And it's why it's kind of become one of Nintendo's long lost franchises. But
yeah.
So eventually Nintendo evolved into the Direct. The Wii era and the early Wii U era live presentations for Nintendo, I feel, were pretty bad for the most part, apart from, I don't remember which year it was. It was the year they showed off Kid Icarus, was like one of the best E3s ever. Like, because they showed off, if I remember right, that year they showed off Kid Icarus, Other M, Paper Mario sticker, whatever. I don't remember, for the 3DS. And yeah, a lot of those games didn't end up being very good that I just named. But when they were revealed, they were hype. Yeah. Because like we didn't get a Paper Mario for forever. We were getting a new Team Ninja look at Metroid, and a revival of the Kid Icarus franchise brought up by Sakurai himself. So that was a big year. 2000. I don't remember which year. Man, I should have like looked up all these beforehand, but there was that one year with like Brawl coming out. That was like a huge moment. When they announced Brawl.
That was enormous. I remember sitting there watching. I think that was it was definitely before like live streams and stuff. So you had to like watch the videos after the fact for the presentations. Like you would download the videos or watch them on YouTube back in the day after it happened by a games journalist or something. And that was just so cool. And then they opened up like the Smash Dojo website, and that was so cool.
Oh, yeah. So like the evolution of E3, it was originally supposed to be a trade show just for like press journalists to come like demo games so that they could write about them in their like magazine articles for the next year. And so it'd be like a slow trickle of news out of E3. You wouldn't even get everything like immediately or even hear about everything that went on at E3.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I want to say like 2006, 2007, 2008, around that era where IGN and GameSpot would stream the live press conferences on their website, and you would have to go to their websites to stream them, and you would just get stuck also having to like watch a bunch of like coverage by whatever site it was, and most of them were pretty anti-Nintendo at the time, so
yeah,
it wasn't too great.
Right, and they'd be walking around the press floor and we'd all be like, why are you talking? Just show us the new games that are coming out.
Yeah, like, man, Nintendo fans have it so good right now compared to where it was when we were growing up.
It makes me laugh, like not to be like we are the old guard and gatekeep any of you newer fans to the Nintendo series or Nintendo franchises of games and such, but it was really rough for a very long time, and it's so nice now that we have the Switch and all of that. Like it's incredible to watch how Nintendo has just completely transformed since we were younger. And honestly, I think a lot of the things that they learned at E3 press conferences helped them in a lot of ways. Of course, they evolved as a company. You know, they ended up making the Nintendo of America offices that ended up having a way larger role in distribution here in the US, where they even collaborated more with the Japanese offices. All sorts of things that made them much more of a global company rather than just a Japanese company with an American presence. And it's incredible to see how they've evolved. Nintendo did have some really awesome moments before a lot of the like big shifts that have happened in more recent years. I mean, we've already mentioned Brawl, but I also remember how cool Twilight Princess looked when they first announced it.
Oh yeah, that was like one of the biggest moments of E3 history.
Yeah,
people just lost it. That moment, another really big moment was when Reggie came out on the stage for the first time, and he's like, "My name's Reggie Fils-Aimé. I'm all about kicking ass and playing games," or something.
Yeah. That was like one of my first real interactions with Reggie.
Yeah,
and
he came out swinging for memes. Like,
there's a reason why so many people are always saying, "Reggie, when are we getting Mother 3?" and stuff like that, because he actually embraced that, which was really cool. So
yeah, I know a lot of people are really down on E3 now, especially since like they've had like major leaks in the past. And I guess a lot of people don't like how fillery they are. Like E3 is long. It has a lot of content. It is pushing for a lot of games, and you're going to have to like sift through just hours and hours of footage of games that frankly you're not going to play.
Yeah.
Just for the big moments. And that's how it always has been.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's gotten better. Now everyone kind of just does their own digital event, and you can just play everything at like 2 times speed if you come an hour late or something.
Yep.
And on top of that, the pacing of the shows have just gotten so much better. Like, I don't know how much you watched the E3 directs for other studios, but like Microsoft would always just go on and on about like sports and TV and their Connect. And then they would like show a little bit of their game, and then it would just like a big game like Halo or something. And then they just go back to the casual stuff that I don't feel like anyone was using their product for. Like everyone was there for Halo and stuff, like, but they were trying to be Nintendo at E3, constantly trying to fight against their own image. Early Microsoft, let's be honest, Microsoft has typically been really bad at E3 until very recently under Phil Spencer.
Yep.
I think Microsoft's new approach, where they're just like game after game after game after game, it's very nice. And yeah, a lot of people don't like that approach because they tend to be cinematic trailers rather than gameplay trailers. But I've always been of the belief that E3, the press show, should be cinematic trailers just to get you kind of like interested to then watch the show coverage on the show floor of someone actually playing the game.
Exactly. And that's what Nintendo excelled at a lot during the, I guess before the pandemic and somewhat during the Wii U era even, is when they released, or I guess when they started showing the Treehouse stuff, or you started getting more people going to their huge show floor areas and showing like actual parts of the demos of the games, or Treehouse playing through the first area and actually talking about it. Like, yeah, we were all there for the big reveals the hour or two beforehand. But then after that, when Nintendo opened their doors, when they shifted their live streams to talking about the games, to getting the coverage from people there in person, it just was a completely different experience. And like, that's what I really appreciated about E3 being different, because, you know, the last few years, the Nintendo presentations have been far more like just their directs that they do every couple of months anyway, which that's totally fine. I really love those anyway. E3 typically has a lot of the bigger announcements from Nintendo. Like, I don't know, we can talk about that in just a second. But what was really interesting to me was literally watching gameplay after the fact. I remember after Skyward Sword finally got presence at E3 beyond just we're making Skyward Sword. It was the same year it was coming out. I could not stop watching games journalists and whatever other content Nintendo pushed out on like that first area in the game. I thought it was so cool, and like I wanted to learn more about it in that regard. And that is what I think made E3 more special than just these digital events that people are pining for right now, is you had actual people playing the games for at least however long you wanted to watch them.
Yeah, I don't think E3 works as a digital only event. Like you need that show floor to present the games. And a lot of the times people have always said like, well, why don't they put the show floor demos on like the PSN network or the Xbox network? And I believe there have been a few times where they have tried that. But one of the reasons why they don't is because they want a very controlled environment, because these aren't supposed to be demos that a customer is supposed to use to like determine whether or not they're going to play the game. These are like pre-alpha builds to kind of like get marketing hype behind.
Right. There is a very big difference between demos and like alpha/betas. If I were a company like Nintendo, I would not want to push to my servers an E3 build, because I know people would tear it apart. They would also probably data mine the entire thing and figure out all of the secrets that are coming that we forgot to scrub or something. And yeah, it just wouldn't be as exciting, I think, if they just released all of those demos to the main base.
It'd be fun, but yeah, I would probably end up my hype for certain games would definitely end a lot sooner.
Yes, yes. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So like I would narrow down my list of like games I'm interested in a lot faster if it is. And like, yeah, that is a pro consumer thing, but it's kind of unfair to like expect a company to do that at the pre-alpha stage.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the things that are announced or shown off at E3 are usually like 2, 3, and even like the regular announcements, like 4 or 5 years before they're even ready to start final production stages.
So yeah, that's why they don't do like demos for consumers to use. But you still need that like show floor. So E3 being an all digital event is just kind of weird.
Yeah.
So
it is a bummer that they couldn't figure out how to make it non-digital this year and have actually had to cancel it. I mean, it is that time of the year. E3 is always June. So if they were going to cancel it 2 months before would be the time to actually say, yeah, we have to cancel. So anyway, it's a bit of a bummer, but I also don't think that other types of presentations that currently exist can even replace E3. I know a lot of people have been asking like the Game Awards folks to take up the mantle, and I definitely don't want that.
So I guarantee Keighley's going to have, Jeff Keighley's going to have a Summer Games Fest again.
Oh, he sure will. He already posted on Twitter a winky face emoji, I think, quote tweeting somebody saying that E3 was canceled. Like,
Can I just say something brutally honest?
Yeah, I'll let you.
I like Jeff Keighley as like, I think he's an entertaining person to listen to. I hate the events he operates.
I absolutely agree with that. And it pains me to say that sometimes, but yeah.
They are so bloated and so commercialized. Like everything everyone says that's wrong about E3, it's like that times 10, it feels like. So
I didn't even watch the Game Awards this year because I didn't want to sit through that. And I'm glad I didn't, because there wasn't enough cool stuff announced anyway that I could catch later. Anyway.
Yeah, so we'll see what he does. I imagine the big three and maybe Ubisoft. Ubisoft might end up going the Keighley route. But the big three will likely just stick to their own stuff.
And make their own presentations.
We also saw last year it was so many digital events that they could have been an email instead of a presentation. Capcom was useless.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why was Gearbox having an event? Why was Square Enix and like a bunch of so there are a bunch of studios that they could definitely benefit by being under a single umbrella like Jeff Keighley, and not under like a platform holder like Nintendo or Microsoft or Sony, because it is kind of weird to have Microsoft, Nintendo, or Sony kind of advertise your game, and no one wants to have like their B+ tier game sitting next to Zelda. Yeah. On the same same event.
Because people watch the Nintendo Directs looking for big Nintendo IPs, and anything else that they show is just going to be buried as noise, which is why Directs work so well for Nintendo. I think is there's usually only like 1 or 2 reveals or cool trailers for cool stuff from Nintendo, and they do spend a lot of good time focusing on that third party stuff. So it works in that regard.
Yeah, but Nintendo fans are like a special breed.
Yeah, we sure are.
They're very focused on like very specific things, and like all Nintendo has to do is push out like a dorky trailer for WarioWare, and you get people excited.
They could just show the title screen for Mother 3, and people would go insane. Like,
yeah, people are looking for very specific things. Third parties tend to have a really hard time being on Nintendo Directs, I feel.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Especially the E3 ones where people are like screaming for Smash or Zelda or Mario news. Like this is the Direct where we expect the most out of Nintendo.
Exactly. That's when they kind of show their hand. They show us what's new and stuff. I mean, even just the last few years of E3 presentations have given us incredible new content and really exciting hype moments.
I think that the Switch era of E3 Directs have been consistently at the top of Nintendo Directs.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
You could pull out very specific moments of like pre-Switch that were like maybe higher moments than anything in the last few years, but the last few years have been at least like consistently 8 or 9s out of 10s.
Yeah.
Sometimes 10.
Yeah. Super good, with lots of really cool announcements, really interesting trailers, and things that most Nintendo fans are excited for, no matter like what your specific Nintendo niche is. You know, like back before the Switch was even announced, back in 2016, that E3 was all about Breath of the Wild. It was really all they had to show us.
That was a huge risk. When they announced that it was going to be just Breath of the Wild, people were so upset. Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, like, no, it was a sad
They announced
time.
that their direct was going to be less. It was going to be 5 minutes. And showing only one game, and everyone was like, "Whoa, Nintendo is dead."
They're banking everything on that Zelda game.
But now that we've seen it, like that was probably one of the best E3s ever because Zelda needed to have its own show. Like, it was completely shaking up the open world genre.
Yeah, and it has had rippling effects since.
And their show was just, all right, here's like a cinematic trailer to make you go nuts. And then we're just going to have like 3 days straight of Nintendo Treehouse coverage of this game.
But only the first area.
The game has plenty of content to like maintain that for some reason. And on top of that, we're just going to let like the press play an hour each for the game.
Yeah, why
like
not?
We have like this giant show floor of just... Oh, man.
Well, and that was before the Switch was even announced. So we were all like, well, it's just
we thought it was a Wii U game.
Yeah. I mean, they only had Wii U's at the booths and stuff for people to play. But like, yeah, no, it was insane.
I'm sure some people will correct us like, oh, they also had, I think they had Pokemon there and some other game that I completely forgot about.
Sun and Moon or whatever might have been.
But it was just like the Breath of the Wild direct. And there's never been another direct
as like focused on a single game as this one was.
I'm kind of worried that they might do that again, or they would have done that again this year.
Yeah.
So I guess we're not getting E3 this year. Here, we'll quickly go through like some of the other like Switch era E3s and like our big moments. One of the things that I've really liked about E3 from Nintendo these last few years it feels like they've been hitting a like miracle for Nintendo fans specifically every single year. So like they announced that Prime 4 is finally in development. That's a huge miracle, right?
Yeah.
They showed off Odyssey being more open and just more freeform. Ridley got into Smash Bros. the year after, which was a huge fan event or a huge fan wish. Banjo was announced the next year.
Yeah.
These are big announcements. And then Dread. And like most of these are Metroid news. And as everyone knows, I'm like a diehard Metroid fan, so I might be a bit biased. But these were some pretty big moments. Like no one was real. Well, like people wanted these things to happen, but they were like pie in the sky, like dreams until they happened.
Exactly.
Every year.
Every single year. We never expected half of this stuff.
Well,
really?
Yeah. We weren't expecting it. We wanted it. We dreamed it.
Yeah. But we didn't think that Nintendo would actually do half of the stuff that they've done with these Switch E3s. And E3 was a perfect time for them to actually show it off because the whole world is watching. Well, not the whole world, but you know what I mean. And they have a huge amount of attention. And it's always huge stuff. And the thing is that they probably tapped into the fact that if they show the really cool, amazing, mind-blowing things at these E3 presentations, that generates enough talk about their stuff on other websites that people will be like, wait, why is Ridley so important? They'll look into like the history that Nintendo fans have with Ridley. They'll look into Metroid games or, with Banjo, they might learn more about Banjo-Kazooie. And, it just generates this like kind of feedback loop of them getting more interested in other Nintendo stuff. All because these huge announcements that the more diehard original, not necessarily original, but like the longer standing Nintendo fans have hoped for years and years and years. And it just worked out perfectly for them. And it was amazing. Yeah.
Nintendo over the last 5 years have consistently made my neighbors probably worried for my sanity with how much screaming I've been doing.
Man, I remember when Prime 4 was announced, I could not stop jumping up and down and shouting. I was really glad that nobody was home with me at that time. And
Ridley broke me.
Yeah. Well, and all they did with Prime 4 was just show a freaking logo. That's all they did. And we
still haven't seen
nuts. It. No, we haven't.
That was 5 years ago. Oh, man.
So it's a bummer that E3 is canceled. I hope that it can make a comeback. I hope this isn't the nail in the coffin for the whole thing. They just couldn't make it work this year. Maybe it'll make a return next year. But who knows?
E3, I believe, said that they're skipping on this year because they're trying to prepare to come back stronger than ever next year. And so they just weren't prepared. I guess, like, we're not in lockdown anymore, but there's still like a bunch of like things up in the air because of the state of the world. Yeah,
especially with like travel and then, of course, other events that we won't really mention on this podcast. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure like there were a bunch of companies that were a bit shaky on going full force on like a live event. So it'd have to be a digital only event. And they did the digital event last year. And I don't think it went very well.
No.
Having the press shows be digital is great. That's fine. But you do need that show floor presence, I feel, for E3 to work.
Yes.
So
especially one that's kind of open up to the public so that you get some fans that really wanted to go in, you know, not just the regular press, but people that run fan websites or even just want to go. So
with that said, I'm still hoping that Nintendo like kind of assumed that there might be a chance that E3 would happen this year and has something planned for that time period for a direct.
I hope so too.
And if they do a direct at that time, I still hope that we get like some sort of Treehouse event, because I feel like Treehouse is a bit underutilized throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Treehouse is mostly in charge of translation work for the Nintendo of America office. So they absolutely get to play the games all the time. And it would be fun to see them more during directs or building up to games actually playing through stuff. I think that would be a great idea.
Now, we might not need like 8 hours a day for 3 days straight. Like
no.
Gotten past, but it would be nice to get like a good few hours after each direct with like Treehouse showing off at least the big stuff. Mm-hmm. Also, some of the small stuff would be nice.
Even some third party or indie show offs in that regard. I mean, I know we have Indie World, but still. As long as Treehouse doesn't announce an entirely new Metroid game during
That was
Treehouse.
The worst. That was so bad. Oh, that also brings me back. There was one other thing I forgot to mention about when we were talking about the past. Did you remember Nintendo's like private E3? So Nintendo would have 2 E3 shows. One for like back in like 2010, they would have one for basically for to be streamed live to everyone, and then one that was a closed doors just for press. And it made no sense to have like 2 different shows.
Yeah.
And they would just like announce weird things in there for no reason. Like Pac-Man for Smash Bros. Wii U got announced there. Like one of the biggest like third party characters you probably could add to Smash Bros. And you put it in an event behind doors. Like
super bizarre.
Whose idea was that? One of the other ones, they would also do a bunch of like gameplay reveals during there. So like, oh man, I remember because like press weren't allowed to bring any cameras into these. And so you would jump onto IGN and like every like 5 to like 20 seconds, you would get like a single sentence like texted from like the press journalist trying to explain what's happening on screen. It was the worst like game of telephone ever.
It seems like Link is pulling his sword out of his sheath, I think.
It was so bad. I hate those events. I hated that event so much. That was also where they revealed Fire Emblem Awakening. Like,
oh, yeah. Why would they do that? Fire Emblem is such a beloved series.
If I remember right, it was a mistake. So what happened was Nintendo had a really lackluster E3 that year, and fans were upset. I think that I don't remember which year it was. It might have been like the year that they showed off Nintendo Land as their big finishing game.
Oh, yeah. Gross.
But then they had this other like event and they were like talking about like some Mario game on the DS, and they did their whole show, and then they closed it all up, and like we got through the like text messages from like I think it was IGN or something saying, well, that's the end. And then we got another text message saying, I just overheard Reggie going on stage asking like furiously to like his employees, where was Fire Emblem?
That's hilarious.
And that's that was how it got revealed.
Why wasn't Fire Emblem in that video? That's hilarious. We talked about this. That's awesome.
So yeah, E3's got a long ways. If you think it was bad recently, no. The last 5 years, E3 has been the best it's ever been.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So really hope that next year it blows us out of the water, that they come back in a really big way. I hope it works out.
Yeah. So if Keighley is taking over, I really hope he doesn't Game Awards it, where we're just getting blasted with commercials, the things I don't care about. I already have to like sift through games that aren't like my cup of tea to begin with. Don't make me sit through just random commercials that mean nothing to me too.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah.
I don't like how he commercializes everything to try and make a quick buck off of it, but whatever.
I totally agree with that. Totally agree. But I think that kind of wraps up the E3 discussion, don't you think? Unless there's anything else you wanted to say. I don't really have any other opinions.
I just hope that we get something big this year. I guess we'll have like a June Direct predictions video episode still. So like one of the nice things about E3 was that it was like consistent. You knew something big was coming, so you could like prepare for it and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially since we've been doing podcasting for a while. That was always nice because you could like schedule an episode. But now who knows when Nintendo's going to reveal something.
Hey, they might just drop a new Splatoon 3 trailer on us tomorrow because they're like, oh, well, I guess we're not doing an E3.
Yeah. On top of that, Sony's already like pieced out of E3 years ago. So it was already kind of like struggling by. Like Microsoft really likes E3, but they're the Western company and this is the Western event. And Nintendo just kind of participates, but they're kind of doing their own thing in the same room.
Yeah. That's what Nintendo does. But yeah, I do think we should do some kind of prediction thing. Makes it a lot easier after what we're going to talk about next to kind of see what we'll really get around June. But yeah, look forward to that. We'll definitely talk about that. The other big piece of news that happened this week was Nintendo uploaded a video at like 8 o'clock in the morning our time just to YouTube and Twitter. And it was just Aonuma talking. And we were like, okay. The title and the like video thumbnail were like an update on the development of the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I don't think the title
was... After the Prime video, your heart immediately sinks when you see that title.
When I saw that, I was not looking forward to what I was about to hear from Aonuma, and the video was fine. It was definitely in the style of the Prime 4 development update video, where it was just like, we need more time for this game. But at the very least, he didn't just straight up say, we have thrown out all of the work that's been done on it and are starting from scratch.
Could you imagine?
I would lose my mind. Oh, it's already been 5 years since Breath of the Wild came out. Like, if they dropped all of their work after showing us that awesome trailer last year, I would have lost it. But all he did say was, give us another year. We're planning for a spring 2023 release. So
it's not even like another year. So this delay doesn't feel that drastic to me because I was already expecting the game to come out like November.
Yeah.
And so spring 2023 is like what? Like
another 4 months.
Like, sure, it's fine. I'll live.
Yeah.
I'm really appreciative that Nintendo does this now.
Wow. For sure.
Where they are transparent and just kind of like tell it as it is. And I am perfectly okay with big games getting delayed after we've experienced stuff like Cyberpunk's at 2077.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's even a nicer change of pace, even if you consider the last like 2-ish decades of Zelda games where we didn't hear like anything. And then all of a sudden it would just, we got a trailer and it showed another year attached to the end of it. You know, like the Breath of the Wild game, when it was just like Zelda Wii U, as we called it, it was like we got the first trailer and it was like 2018. And then the next trailer we got was like 2015. Then we got another trailer that was like 2016. And then we got the final trailer and it actually was 2017. And that's what it ended up being. At least in this regard, the first mention we got of the Breath of the Wild sequel was just, it's in development. And we got a little bit of a trailer, which you and I had talked about before, that we thought that that was just super early game, that they hadn't really done anything when they showed us that trailer for the game, right?
Yeah.
And then last year we got a nice long trailer that showed it off, and it did say 2022. But now we have this nice transparent video that has just said we need more time, and actually explained a little bit about the situation. One of the kind of important things that was mentioned was like the scope of the game is even bigger than they initially planned. Enuma specifically said that.
Yeah, which I kind of want to get into a bit because I'm glad Nintendo's being transparent about the hey, we set these expectations for fans. We're not going to meet them. We're going to just kind of like tell it straight as it is, like a year in advance almost. We need more time. One thing I'm a bit critical with Nintendo is they have not communicated why this game is taking so long to develop.
No, they haven't.
They have not. Because when they first started talking about it, they made it sound like, well, originally it was supposed to be like DLC for Breath of the Wild, and then it evolved into its own game. And then they said, well, it's just going to be the same map as the first game, which made us really concerned because in an open world adventure game, you want a new adventure. Yeah. And then they show off the sky, and everyone's like, this is great, but why is the main world still there?
Well, and not just that, but why is the main world, why does it look so unfinished and unchanged?
Yeah. It's the same thing again. This feels like kind of like an asset flip. Well, that's kind of like a dirty way to say it, but like it's fine to like do these because like Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game ever made, and that's an asset flip, right? Yeah. They took like all the assets from Ocarina of Time and then ran away with like some crazy new idea that's never been replicated by a single other game in the future. Yep. Like that game is insane, and that game took like what, a year and a half to make? Why is it taking like 6 years? What is going on? You have the mechanics done, right? You have the assets done, the mechanics, everything.
You guys spent like 2 years of development on the first game. Like you literally said in like a developer conference that you held months after the game released that you spent like 2 years making the engine and tools for the game, and then it only took you like a year to design the whole world. Like what did you have to change for Breath of the Wild 2?
So what this tells me is that the game is experiencing extreme feature creep. They went into the project not having like a detailed like plan of what they wanted. They were met with like some disappointment with fans of what they had like promised, and that probably like encouraged them to then drastically change things.
Yeah.
And that probably honestly, this game might have gone through multiple cycles of restarting development. Like we learned with Skyward Sword, which is another game that took forever to develop, especially after it was announced.
Yep. Another 5 years.
They rebuilt that game 3 times from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably going through some rough development. Before people get really concerned, most Zelda games go through really rough development. Breath of the Wild went through rough development. Yeah. Skyward Sword went through rough development. Yeah. Wind Waker went through rough development. I don't remember if Twilight Princess did or not, but
I think Twilight Princess still took a while to make. Right. And they delayed it so that it could release simultaneously on the GameCube and Wii. Well, when I say simultaneously, I mean like within a month of each other. But anyway.
And like these games are built to stand the test of time, right?
Yes, they are designed to be adventures that you can play at any point, any like future date later. They're not just like, let's just throw out a quick game so that you have it. They are Zelda games that, well, they're video games, and the Zelda franchise, at least the main 3D titles, are designed to stand the test of time. Maybe not visually, but at least in the sense of gameplay, in the sense of exploration and puzzles and all of that. Like, they're not supposed to just be you play it once and you're done. They hope that you enjoy it and are nostalgic enough about it that you can play it multiple times.
Yeah, and to Nintendo, these games are worth a lot more than like their like release day sales, because like they will be re-released, they will get remakes, they sell consoles. Like they are the identity of Nintendo, and what keeps people here. People will like buy a Switch because Zelda, they'll buy it for Zelda, right? And then they might like pick up like Metroid afterwards. And so like it trickles down to the other smaller franchises. So it's really important that Nintendo gets these like main flagship Zelda titles right. They don't put as much effort into like some of the smaller like spin-off ones, but these main flagship ones, along with like Mario and Smash Bros, they have to be top tier quality.
Yep, or they will not sell the consoles. that they need to. They just won't. I mean, we talked literally on our last episode about the Nintendo Switch's 5th anniversary. Like, people bought Zelda before they could get their hands on a Switch.
Yeah, it was 102% like attachment rate. It's like, how? What?
Yeah, more people had the game than had Switches. And it was a similar case with even Twilight Princess back on the Wii. Like, yeah. And honestly, my humble opinion is that one of the reasons that the Wii U didn't like take off as much is they didn't have a Zelda title ready for launch.
Well, that, and I don't think 3D World is that strong of a Mario game, but.
Oh, yeah, true. But anyway, that's delving into conspiracy theory levels.
They put too many of their eggs in the basket for Pikmin for Wii U, which I love Pikmin, and Pikmin 3 is great, but one,
it's not Pikmin 2.
It didn't come out like when the Wii U came out because it kind of got delayed a bit, and two, it's pretty niche.
Yeah, like, Pikmin's not a huge franchise. Still isn't. I mean, all that to say, like, I am really grateful that Nintendo's giving us this transparency because, like, in the case of Skyward Sword, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and even parts of Breath of the Wild, we didn't get any information like this. And it's really nice that Nintendo's doing that now. Like, seriously.
So I'm going to say something that a lot of Nintendo fans probably won't like.
Oh, no.
I hope that this game, Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, is not shown at this June. I hope they hold off on it until like December. I don't want to know anything. I don't want to. I like how like silent everything has been with this game, because like had we gotten like a full blown trailer by this point, this delay would have been a lot more painful. Right now it's like, yeah, sure. Like, I don't even know what this game is yet.
I honestly agree with that. As much as I pine and yearn for Zelda news and information, I would like it to be closed doors. If they're going to show something revolutionary at E3, it better be Odyssey 2.
Or Prime 4. Or Donkey Kong.
Or Prime 4. But
like, they have a lot of like things in the works. Like, I think Nintendo will do fine this year. Like, 2022 is already pretty stacked. What is going to be the big holiday game this year, though?
I don't know.
They obviously were planning Zelda.
Definitely.
Because Xenoblade is September, so that's not the holiday game.
Nope.
Pokemon is a yearly release. If that was a holiday game, we never get a holiday game that from Nintendo that's not Pokemon.
Yep. And it's going to be Odyssey 2.
Do you think so?
Or Prime 4. I don't know.
I don't think there's any
whole
game
year
that we don't know about.
So wacky. Like, we have to like make another episode or something where we correct all of our predictions from a couple of months ago.
I can see them rushing out Twilight Princess HD or Wind Waker HD, or pushing a game that was originally planned for August to like October, November, like a Metroid Prime HD or something, or Bayonetta could probably be like their October game, I guess, for the holiday release.
Yeah, but that doesn't scream kid friendly.
Yeah. I mean, like there have been years where it's fine, I think.
Yeah.
I do think it's funny that people were basically saying like, oh, well, like I was predicting like this was going to happen because it didn't show up at the last Direct. And it's like, well, neither did Bayonetta. Do you think that Bayonetta is getting delayed? Like,
Splatoon 3 didn't even show up. Like, come on.
No, Splatoon 3 was at the last Direct, wasn't it?
Was it?
Yeah, they showed Salmon Run.
Oh, that's right. But they only showed Salmon Run. They didn't show any of the story stuff.
To be fair, that's the best mode of Splatoon.
Yeah, I mean, it is. But yeah. I don't think a lot of Splatoon fans, well, the more dedicated Splatoon fans would agree with that. But
they didn't even tell me like the most important thing about Salmon Run. All they have to say is like one sentence. Salmon Run is eternal.
Yeah.
All they have to tell me is that I can play Salmon Run anytime I want.
Yeah. Oh, that is the most obnoxious thing about Salmon Run, is that it's scheduled. It's so dumb. Whatever. Anyway, beyond kind of the logistics of like the Zelda delay, we did get like 5 seconds of new footage from the game, but they were definitely cutscene-y. The biggest thing, and I don't really want to do like a whole theory dive episode. There are tons of YouTubers and stuff out there that have already made 20-minute video essays on these 5 seconds of footage. So you can go listen to them if you really want to. But we did get a couple of shots. The first new shot confirms that the Master Sword is severely damaged. It actually has like this really cool kind of flame pattern to it, where there are holes. It looks like that malice or force that was in the first trailer really has corrupted the Master Sword, like a lot of people were kind of thinking it did, since Link never used the sword in the other trailer. So that's kind of cool to see. We also got a closer look at Link's robot arm. And honestly, that whole shot just takes me back to the concept art that they showed after Breath of the Wild released, that showed Link with like this super futuristic-y gear where he had an entire missing arm that was replaced with Sheikah tech, and the Master Sword was broken in half. So they're taking inspiration from that, which is super cool. Excited to learn more if like the story is we have to rebuild the Master Sword, make a new one. Maybe Fi is making a real appearance, but in a better way than in Skyward Sword. I don't know. Lots of things to think about in that regard. We also saw his face. We did not see Skylink's face. We call him Skylink because he's wearing the like older style clothes or whatever, and was it just in the sky? We never saw his face in the first trailer, and now we've seen his face and we can confirm that it's Link. So there you go.
Yeah, I think they did that shot specifically because people were theorizing like it was something special, and Nintendo's like, oh no, we don't want people like speculating hardcore into something that's just wildly untrue, and we don't want fans to end up being disappointed with the final product when their like fan theories aren't real. So let's quickly give them a quick shot of like,
yeah, here's Link. Like it is Link. Don't worry, it's Link.
Because this kind of was like the similar thing with, if I remember right, people were very convinced that Link was going to be a girl in Breath of the Wild because like they didn't show like certain things or whatever in the first trailer, and so I think they wanted to kind of like avoid another fan disappointment event, sort of like that.
Right. Though they did not show us anything from the land in this new stuff. And kind of like I alluded to before, all of the footage that we got on the land seemed really underdeveloped. There was like an obvious lack of even entities in the overworld. Like the two shots that we got of Link running around attacking the talus that had all of the bokoblins and stuff on it. Like there was nothing else in the area other than a couple of trees and the grass. Plus Link was wearing his old tunic, and if we're to believe that the scene that we saw in the first trailer was at the beginning of the game, then like why on earth is Link not in his corrupted clothes? So like there are lots of wild theories going around, and I don't want to delve into them, but it seems like that's kind of where a lot of the new like expansion that Anuma mentioned is going, I think, is more of the land based Hyrule, and there are probably going to be some significant changes there.
Which we know that was one of the big things for why Breath of the Wild 1 got delayed, was that they did a test play with, I think, press people on the original Breath of the Wild, and people were like, this is pretty boring because it's pretty empty. And so then they kind of like retracted Breath of the Wild from like the news cycle and just like filled the world with stuff to do. Yeah. So maybe that's what happened here again. Maybe they got people to do a play test and it wasn't the reaction that they wanted out of it.
Because the sky stuff looks super cool and super interesting. And if there's like as much stuff to explore up there as there was in base Hyrule, I would be fine. But if you have to explore both and base land Hyrule is exactly the same, I would feel kind of cheated, honestly. They
specifically said that they want to like expand. I don't remember the exact wording, but they expand like the amount of like content that we're going to have, right? So It sounded like there's going to be more to the game than just like the main world and the sky world. Almost like there's a third world or something, right?
Yeah, that's what it sounded like he was alluding to as well.
So I think the most obvious one is time travel. I honestly, the more I think about it, I think time travel is going to be a bigger effect on this.
Which that's one of the other theories about Land Link, is that Land Link is past Link.
Yeah.
Like in the tapestry, because there are differences between Breath of the Wild Link and the Link that's shown in the tapestry. So
I'm just thinking that there's got to be some hook that they haven't like shown us yet. Because one, they haven't told us like the title of the game yet,
which they said they would not reveal because it would like give something away about the game.
And then in this trailer thing, which I thought it was funny that GameSpot has it listed as a trailer for Breath of the Wild 2. But in this video, they say that there's like certain mechanics that they haven't revealed yet that they're excited to show us. And so I think it might be tied to time travel in some way.
I mean, we did see in the trailer last year that one of the new Sheikah abilities, I mean, who knows if it's the Sheikah Slate or Link's magic arm, like it reversed the time of that ball. Like maybe that's just a small controlled portion of the time travel mechanic and you actually can really go back in time.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering if like, because it's going to be so heavily focused on time, the reason why they might be having some difficulty with getting this game out and like so much development issues is because the hook might be that time has a major factor on like how the world is structured. So like you change time periods or whatever, and like the entire world completely shifts around that so that they can have puzzles around it or so. And they might have like multiple time periods. So it's not just like going back and forth between two different time periods like it was with Ocarina of Time. It might be like maybe 3 or 4, like might be seasons. I don't know.
Yeah. So it might be more like Oracle of Ages or Oracle of Seasons where the overworld actually does change.
Yeah. Or maybe this will explain how all the timelines kind of converged, because now we're jumping between the timelines as they like move towards one single one.
Is this game going to be the convergence game that everyone's hoping for?
You know what? That's the theory I'm going with now.
All right, I'm placing my bets. It may not be the one, but that's the one I like the best so far. Yeah, this is the convergence game because they have listed Breath of the Wild as taking place so far in the future that it's on all 3 timelines somehow. Like, it's so weird.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's do it.
I'm just worried that Fee's going to have a big role in this game now, especially with like the glowingness of the sword. I believe Zelda mentioned like Fee's voice in Breath of the Wild 1.
She absolutely did. And you can hear her when the Master Sword gets its like full pure version after the trials.
Yeah. So I think Fee's returning. Fee will probably be the tutorial character again, even though we didn't. I guess Zelda was technically the tutorial character in Breath of the Wild, right?
She had like 5 lines, though, is all. Just like, wake up, walk
I guess
to the
not
tower.
Tutorial character, but like companion character.
And I would like a companion character to make some kind of return. I hope that with this like corruption-y thing that Fee, whatever, I forget how Nintendo pronounces it. I hope that she's like kind of damaged and has a non-robotic personality now. You know, like they've updated her character based on how long she's been in the sword and stuff, because like I honestly felt real emotions during the end of Skyward Sword. I grew attached to her as a character, but she is annoying as a companion. So I hope that they fix that.
I think she is my least favorite companion.
Yeah. I mean,
I like most of the companions in Zelda. Navi is not too great.
No, Navi's annoying. And then she doesn't say anything for the second half of the game.
I really like Tattle. I really like King of Red Lions and Midna.
Yes, they were both great.
Zelda and Spirit Tracks. I like Linebeck.
Yep.
So
they were all good.
Most companion characters have been good. I just wasn't a fan of Fee.
Yeah, well, it was kind of soured because she would give you updates way too frequently. And a lot of them were like, have you tried using the dowsing feature, Master? Or your batteries are low. You're just like, shut up. I know. But I mean, I hope they do her character better if she is the companion character. Yeah. She's been around long enough and traveled with enough links that maybe she has changed if she's been conscious the whole time. So who knows? I'm trying to think if there's anything else to say. We are enormous fans of Zelda. I mean, we talk about how much we love Metroid, but we also very much love Zelda, Jordan and I. So we will definitely be doing more episodes about Zelda games in the future for the podcast. And we will definitely talk probably an entire episode about Zelda if they do show it at E3, which we hope they don't, but there's still a chance.
So before we go, what are your thoughts on the Nintendo fan conspiracy theory that Nintendo's just afraid of Elden Ring for the award shows?
I think there's some merit to it. I don't think that Nintendo is actually afraid of Elden Ring, but I do think it's a really funny coincidence.
Yeah, I honestly don't think Elden Ring had anything to do with this delay at all.
No.
Zelda's going to do fine, regardless if it's released in the same year as Elden Ring. By the time we roll around November, everyone will have forgotten about Elden Ring until we actually get to the awards show.
And it's not like Nintendo started releasing Legend of Zelda Game of the Year edition or whatever after they won the Game of the Year with Breath of the Wild. So I don't think Nintendo super cares about that award anyway.
But at the same time, it is nice going throughout the year where like you're constantly talked about the entire year. People saying like this is the highest rated game of the entire year. For award darling games, it might just be better to release in springtime than in the fall anyway. Because
I mean, you've got a huge point there.
Yeah, you get like the discussion throughout the entire year. Everyone's just going to be comparing you against every game throughout the whole year. So
I mean, when I finally finish Horizon Zero Dawn, and yes, Zero Dawn, not new, not Forbidden West. I haven't played the sequel because I don't have a PlayStation 5, but I'm playing Horizon for the first time. When I finish that, I'm probably going to pick up Elden Ring because I've heard too many good things about it to not play it.
Elden Ring is so good. I know this is a Nintendo podcast. I haven't said anything about it. It's been out for a month now. And I have already clocked in more than 200 hours into the game.
You're insane.
Like, that game is huge. I think it's the next evolution of open world games. The first like major step since Breath of the Wild. There are some things I would have liked them to like take from Breath of the Wild, such as like being able to climb up walls, but whatever. Yeah, Elden Ring is going to dominate this entire year. I don't think anyone's even like trying to contest it at this point.
No, I don't think they can. So it's good that Breath of the Wild's been delayed, if only for that Game of the Year stuff. But we don't think that that's the actual reason for their delay.
Also, the timing of this announcement seems interesting that they did it the week their fiscal year was ending.
Yeah.
So I think what was going on was Nintendo kept going to like the Zelda team and saying, so will you be able to make a 2022 release date? And they're like, we don't know, like maybe not. We're trying to get these features and we're having some difficulty here and there. And it's been like, just like, we're not entirely sure until like it came to this week. And Nintendo came out and was like, all right, do you know if you're going to hit the 2022 deadline? And the Zelda team probably said, we're unsure. Like, we do not know. We probably will. We most likely will, but it's kind of up in the air. And Nintendo probably said, you're getting delayed. We don't want to lie to our investors this week. That's my theory.
That is a very sound theory, honestly. From a business standpoint, it makes sense. And it's just really nice that if that is the case, that Nintendo has the leeway and the, like, I don't know, like, what's the word that I'm trying to think of? But like the patience and the maybe not caring so much about the bottom line when it comes to games like these, that they allow them that space. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, these are evergreen titles, like we said. Like Zelda Breath of the Wild is still selling. So I don't think Nintendo has much to be concerned about. Their main priority is to make it good.
Yeah. Here's hoping that it really is good. And I mean, I have no doubt that it will be at least fun as a Zelda game. I think that the Zelda team does amazing work. Breath of the Wild blew me away, and I'm just excited to see what they want to show us in the next one. That's worth the 6-year development cycle. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, Jordan, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up this episode?
I think I'm good.
Cool. I'm good too. And you too, listener, are good. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the NintenFusion podcast. We sure appreciate it. Please be sure to give us a review or a like or whatever on whatever platform you're listening to us on. It really helps with that kind of feedback and helps the algorithm suggest the show to more people and all that stuff. You can find all of the platforms that we're available on at anchor.fm/NintenFusion. And please be sure to join our Discord server so that you can talk about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild sequel or any other Nintendo title at nintenfusion.com/Discord. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.
See ya.